Thank you for tuning in and checking out another episode of Unlucky, a memoir. My name is Kat. Everyone has a story. This one just happens to be mine. Welcome back. Another week down, right? It's been crazy weather lately. A lot of rain. South of here, like crazy hail. Figures right after I get a motorcycle, right? But the rainy season should be almost over. We need the rain. But that's not why I'm here this week to give a weather report. Again, coming into this week, unsure of what was going to talk to me, what was going to speak to me, and what I was going to talk about this week. And I had a conversation with somebody at church saying that, there's some weeks I think maybe I'm just done. Maybe that it's run its course, right? And then the week plays itself out and something comes to me, like in a conversation, a facilitation, helping somebody, serving something. And I'm starting to understand, and I'm so grateful that I've recorded these, because it's getting a little more difficult to reach into my memory to pull out some of this stuff. And I think a lot of that has to do with I'm actually so far removed from it at this point. Over the years, even though like I had bouts of, let's call it abstinence, because it wasn't recovery technically, because I wasn't really doing any work. I didn't actually work on any of the issues. I just stopped putting the narcotics into my body. And that is not recovery. That is not how this works, because I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'll say it a million times. The drugs and alcohol are never the problem. They were never, ever my problem. It was things I refused to look at and deal with and thought I could avoid by getting high. And all that did was compound the problems, make mountains out of molehills, and sooner or later I had to deal with all that stuff, and usually not in a great way. But this time I've done some work. I've done what I needed to do to start moving forward and be a better person. And I'm not there completely. And I don't know if I'll ever be to that end goal. And I don't know if I want to be. I just want to keep working, moving forward, and getting better every day. And that had me thinking about a conversation I actually had just a few hours ago, right? And I was explaining to some new clients about, in what we do is we try to have a holistic approach. And I remember for the longest time, whenever I heard the word holistic, I thought of like, all natural drugstore, or like holistic remedies, and that's not the definition of holistic. They may tag holistic onto things like that, with that kind of being the meaning, but holistic is, I think the definition is describing, the only way to describe the one thing is through its many parts. So all encompassing, right? And I had to take a look at that, right? I had to figure it out, because like they say the 8 dimensions of wellness are kind of what make up a person. These are the things that are inherent in just about everybody. And the goal, I guess the ultimate goal is to have them all at 10s, all 8 dimensions at a 10, which if anybody ever tells you that, chances are they're lying. But because there's 8, and I remember when this was first taught to me, it's like thinking of it like a stage with 8 legs, right? If you cut off one of those legs, the stage is still going to be pretty sturdy. Maybe 2, maybe even 3. But once you start getting, too many of those legs chopped down, it's going to start having a greater effect on your life. And just about every pillar, every dimension of those 8 in my life was void. I couldn't put my finger on any of them being in any really good position throughout most of my adult life and most of my addiction. And not to say like one or two here and there may have excelled for a little bit, but it was only for a little bit. But like, so like the 8 dimensions, right? Like they say emotional, financial, social, spiritual, physical, intellectual, and environmental. And right off the bat, environmental. I changed my environment. And I don't just mean moving from outside of Philadelphia to Colorado. I mean, that's part of it. But I changed my overall environment. I don't hang out with the people that are getting high, that are in active use. The only time I interact with the people that are heavily using is to try to help them in some way. I'm not hanging out with them. I'm not spending my time with them. And that was a big problem in the past. I would spend time with people in active use, even though I was quote unquote in recovery. I was abstinent from drugs, if we're honest. And there's an old saying, you hang out in a barbershop long enough, you're going to get a haircut. And I would, because, and even if I thought in some part of me was going to help them, they were going to get me high before I was going to get them well. They need to want it just as I needed to want it, right? And like, let's jump over to occupational, which is one of the 8. I'm fulfilling that with purpose in the occupation I have. But here's the craziest thing. Like I remember learning about these dimensions, and the definition for occupational isn't what I thought it would be. Like it's not your job or your career. It's things that give purpose in your life, the intrinsic value of doing. And that could be what I do on Sundays, serving at my church, right? I'm not getting paid for that, but it's occupational. When I had a homeless outreach, when we were going out handing out bag lunches and blankets and clothing and hygiene products, like that's occupational. It's any work you do that fulfills you, right? And like that kind of threw me, because like when I was in the program I was in, first learning about the 8 dimensions, like I'm like, well, I can't work anyway, so that doesn't even apply to me. And then breaking it down, it does, because I could help out at church. I could help out around the program, and all that stuff, it can be considered occupational. And it's important to remember there's a reason there's 8, right? Because again, like I said, they're never all going to be just tip top 10s. Like we're human beings. There's always going to be something that's a little lax here or there. And that's a nice thing, right? Because if I'm faltering in one of those eight dimensions, I learn to lean on the other 7 and support myself on those. And then I can work on the one I'm lax on. And then by the time I fix it, maybe one of the other ones is a little down, right? And it's about finding that balance. And like I've come to the conclusion and understanding that my life's not going to be perfect. I don't know what that means. So it's facing challenges head on and moving through them with the faith that I have that I'm going to make it out the other side regardless. And that helps keep one of the other dimensions afloat, is my emotional, right? It keeps me emotionally stable. Like I don't react anymore. There are times where I still start to falter and come off my square a bit, but those times are fewer and fewer. And when they do happen, the amount of time I spend there is less and less. And all these things are a major factor in me moving forward in my recovery. So I guess I covered about 3 of them. I'm not going to drill you for another 20-30 minutes trying to explain the rest. Maybe I'll pick up on that next week, depending on what happens between now and then and what God puts in my heart to put on these videos. But again, I'm grateful for these videos because I can look back at them and remember the things and what I'd been through, right? Because life can get really good on the other side of recovery. And you start replacing all that negative that you experienced and have gone through with new positive memories, emotions, experiences, and like you distance yourself from your past. It's always there. I don't have to dwell in it, but it's nice to have this as a reminder for what I've accomplished and what I've gone through. It's not to dwell in the past and sit back and woe is me and the things I'd been through in my life. It's not about that. It's about the accomplishments I made and being able to point to somebody else and show them, look, I have empirical evidence what can happen when you're in recovery and where you can go with it and the blessings that can be bestowed upon you just doing the next right thing. So again, I'm grateful to each and every one of you for tuning in every week, watching my videos. It means so much to me. It helps me move forward in my recovery, and God willing, it helps somebody else out there who's struggling see what is possible. I'd like to ask you all to like, share, subscribe, all that stuff that feeds the algorithm, that pushes these videos a little bit further and tries to get them in other people's hands and hopefully help somebody. I know it's helping me. And with that, greatly appreciate each and every one of you who tune in, check my stuff out, and follow along with my journey on a weekly basis. Catch you all next week.